Welcome to the latest installment of the 30-Minute Workout Series. My name is Jeff Bartles, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Lou Holland. In today's session, we're going to look at how we can configure Civil 3D Cloud projects for multi-team collaboration. First, we'll do some webinar logistics. When you connected to today's webinar, by default, you connected using the computer audio. If you'd like to switch to phone audio, you can do that using the audio settings button down below. If you're having some issues with your audio during the webinar, sometimes simply disconnecting and reconnecting to the webinar is all it takes to resolve those issues. If you have questions during today's session, please put those in the Q&A pane. It's the most efficient way for the folks working behind the scenes to find and respond to those questions. No need to take notes. These sessions are recorded. Anybody who has registered for the session will get access to a recording. I'm also bringing up the safe harbor statement. I don't anticipate making any forward-leaning or future development comments today regarding our applications. In the event I do, though, please don't make any purchasing decisions based on future statements because things can and often do change. If you're unfamiliar with the 30-Minute Workout concept, this is a platform we put together to help folks get up and running using many of Autodesk's civil infrastructure applications. We've been doing these sessions for a couple years now. Over the past couple months, we've been looking at how to leverage Civil 3D within the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. During these sessions, we take a step-by-step approach to the material, focusing on the how and why we're doing things. We include practical examples where we can. That being said, we do have some ground rules. You may notice that some of the examples that we show are abstract in nature. We do that on purpose. This way we can focus solely on how a tool works. Once you understand how the tool works, you can apply it in whatever situation works best for you. We value your time, so we're committed to starting and ending on time. These sessions are recorded, as I mentioned earlier. The most important ground rule is, obviously, please put those questions in the Q&A pane. We have got a lot of things to talk about today. This is a huge topic. We're going to look at how we can generate team spaces within our projects. We'll look at how we can configure team spaces. I'm going to show you how we can share packages between teams and how those packages are shared using a timeline. We'll look at how we can navigate the timeline. We'll also look at how we can consume packages, which would automatically update things like external references and data shortcuts between teams. At the end of today's session, I'm going to be sharing some additional resources if you'd like more information about the topics that we cover today. As always, this is going to be a PowerPoint free zone. We'll be working live in the application for the duration of our time together. Let's start by doing just a quick overview of the team space concept. This might be a large project, we'll say, where you have multiple teams involved, maybe a surveying team, maybe an engineering team, maybe a hydrology team or a utilities team. When you're dealing with large projects, sometimes it can be helpful for each team to have their own collaborative space. That way, we don't have to worry about folks referencing or creating data shortcuts to other people's work before it's ready. By creating these team spaces, each team can have their own designated folder, where they can have their own directory structure. This is their own collaborative environment where they can work amongst themselves. The teams can't see the contents of the other team's folders, so it's kind of a private situation. When the time is right and a team wishes to share content, they can create what's called a package. And that package is then placed in the shared folder. Each team has access to the shared folder where they can review the contents of the items that are shared by the other teams. After a file or a model has been reviewed, it can then be consumed into the other team spaces such that it can be used to create external references or data shortcuts, things like that. The beauty of this setup is that if Team B, for instance, we'll say they're a surveyor, maybe they share a topo, that topo gets placed in the shared folder, and then when it's reviewed by the other teams and they choose to consume it, maybe they create a data shortcut to it. In the event the surveyor shares an updated version of that topo, it goes into the shared folder. When it gets consumed into another team folder, it will version up the version of the file in their team space, which would update any data shortcuts or external references that they have. It's considered a low-trust environment. In the big scheme of things, this is all folder management, and the nice thing is it's all handled transparently behind the scenes. So all of this is taken care of automatically for you, and we'll take a look at how it works. I'm going to drop out of this, and then I'm going to jump over to my web browser. As you can see, I'm in a project called Briarwood Phase 1. Now, this could be a roadway job, could be a subdivision job, doesn't matter in this case. We'll just say it's a large project that requires multiple teams. For this example, just based on the time frame that we have allotted, I'm going to create two teams. I'm going to create an engineering team, and I'll create a surveying team. And I would like the surveying team to be able to share a topo to the engineering team that they can create a data shortcut to, and then we'll have the surveying team share an updated version of that topo, and we'll see how it updates the data shortcuts. Notice that in this project, I have an empty directory structure. I do that because when I set up team spaces, the platform is going to generate folders automatically. And it'll be real easy to see the folders that are created because they'll be the only folders that we see here. Having said that, we do not have to start with an empty project to do team spaces. You can have folders in here already if you want to. I'm just simplifying things to make it easy to understand as the folders are created. One more thing. If I go to members, you can see that I only have 2 members in this project. I'm keeping things very simple. I'm going to be a member of the engineering team, and Morty Hackett is going to be the surveying team in this case. We've talked about how to add members to a project. We've talked about how to create some of those existing folders. We've talked about a lot of things to this point. In the event you're unfamiliar with some of the workflows, don't worry about it. At the end of today's session, I'm going to be providing a hyperlink that will give you access to all of the prior recordings. You'll be able to review all of that information. One more thing when it comes to the members, notice that each of us has the Design Collaboration module activated. In order to use this, you'll have to have a license of BIM Collaborate Pro. That module will have to be activated for the project, and it'll have to be assigned to the users or members that will be leveraging that tool. All right, let's go back to Files. To create my team spaces, I'm going to start by coming up to the product picker, and I will choose Design Collaboration. The first time we go into Design Collaboration, it's going to give us the opportunity to set up those team spaces. You can see that when we got here, it dropped us right down to settings where we can start configuring things. I'm going to go ahead and click Get Started. And the first thing we do is create the shared folder. By default, the shared folder is going to be placed right here underneath Project Files. You could choose to accept that if you want. If you click the pencil, you can select a different folder for the shared folder. Now, I don't have any other options in this case, so I'm just going to keep this where it was. We'll just keep shared. The important thing to note is once you choose your shared folder and you click Next to accept that, it cannot be changed later. So just make sure that you're sure when you create that shared folder. Let's choose Confirm and Continue. Once the shared folder has been set up, we can then jump to Team Setup. And as we saw earlier, a team space is essentially a folder. Each team will have a designated folder for which they can generate their own directory structure, and it represents a collaborative space for each team. To create a team space, I'm going to come down and enter a team name. I can click in here, and you can see that as I've been using the platform for a while, I've generated some teams. It just remembers the names that I've used before, so rather than typing surveyors in there, I'm just going to grab that off the list, and I'll click Add. When I create a team, the teams will show up down here in the Teams panel. Each team will be represented as a row. This is where we can review the team. This is where we can edit the properties of the team. I can change the color here if I want to. We'll make the surveyors a light blue. We could change the name of the team. If I click the toggle here, you could delete a team. You can also deactivate a team. Note, if you wanted to delete a team, you can only do that prior to the point that the team has shared something. If they've already shared something, they can't be deleted. Deactivating is similar to deleting them, except you can reactivate them later and they can participate in the sharing again. All right, I'm going to create another team. And before I put the new team name in here, notice that if you have existing folders in your project that represent the teams that you'd like to use, if they've already been set up, you can select existing folders for your teams. I do not have existing folders, so I'm going to create another one here called Engineers, and I'll click Add. There we go. So I have 2 teams set up. Let's take a look at the Docs module, just so we can see what's going on here in the background. I'm going to go back to Docs. This allows us to see the directory structure. And you can see that when I created those teams in the shared folder, I now have a shared folder in the project, and I have a folder for each team. Also notice it's very well organized. When surveyors share things to the shared folder or engineers do that, notice that when I expand the shared folder, you can see how it's organized for us automatically. The surveyor's stuff is going to go in here. The engineer's stuff is going to go in here. If I create additional teams, there would be additional team folders within shared to keep everything organized nicely. Another thing, the surveyor's folder, for instance, this is where they're going to have their own directory structure. Eventually, when they review content that is shared with them, they will consume it, which will make it part of their team space. Notice that each team space includes a consumed folder. That's where the content is going to go that they consume. And that's where they'll reference it from. That's where they'll create data shortcuts. That's where it'll be versioned up when they consume new versions. Okay, so each team has a consumed folder. I would like to generate some additional folders in here. Like I said, each team can have their own directory structure. I am going to create a folder in here called Base DWGs. I'll press Enter. Let's create another folder called Sheet DWGs. And I'll create another folder. Maybe they're going to have some data shortcuts. We'll put a folder in here called C3D Data. Now you can develop the directory structure of your choice. I'm going to do this under Engineers as well. Base DWGs. As I do this, you may be wondering, could these folders be part of a template? And the answer is yes, they can. sheet DWGs, and under engineers, we'll create a working folder for data shortcuts that they may use here in the future. Now that I've generated those folders, I'd like to put some content in here because just based on the interest of time, we don't have time to generate a lot of content. I'm going to bring up my Windows Explorer and let's go to Surveyors Base Drawings. And I've got some files here under Base Drawings. I've just got a topo file. Basically, this is what the surveyor is going to be working on in their team space, and this is what they'll be sharing with the other teams. So I'll put that in there. And then in the sheet drawings folder, here in my CAD files, I'm going to go to sheet drawings, and I've got a couple of examples. What I'm trying to get across here is that I'm organizing my files based on the type of file that it is. Base drawings represent the files that you would typically externally reference. Base files represent the files that you might create data shortcuts to. Okay, they're your models. And then I've got sheet DWGs. This would represent the files that you would X-reference your stuff into. This is the stuff that's got title blocks in it. So why am I organizing this stuff? When we are working in the design collaboration module, when the opportunity comes for us to share packages, by default, it's going to want to look at every single folder that's within your team space. And you may not want it to see the potentially hundreds of files that you have in there. By organizing them in this way, I can control how much it sees. Base drawings is probably going to be the stuff I'm going to want to share. Base drawings is probably going to be the stuff that other folks would want to create data shortcuts to. So I've got some content in here. Let's go back to design collaboration. Now, when I jump into design collaboration, as soon as you start setting things up, it kind of reverts to the home screen. This is where you'll use the application to create packages and share content with others. I want to finish setting things up. I'm going to go to settings. Okay, right back where we were. And let's talk about some of the other settings we have associated with each team space. Notice this has included folders. Remember I said, I want to control how much the platform can see. This is where I can do that. Here I'm saying when I create a package, do I want everything to be available for that purpose? In my case, I don't want that. I'm going to click all here. And I'm going to say that for the engineers, when I'm working in design collaboration in here, I just want you looking in the base DWGs folder. Okay. And I can have additional folders in here. I could have a folder called documents. And I could say, I might have some document files I want to share. Go ahead and make sure and look in that one too. So I have the opportunity to share that content. And let's go to surveyors. We're going to do the same thing. Select folders. You do not have to use my folder names. As always, you can use the directory structure of your choice. Let's come down to Bridge Team Automations. We talked about Bridge a couple sessions ago. With Bridge, we can replicate content between projects or between accounts. If we had bridges set up in this project, this would give us the opportunity to have a team space set up in one account that could potentially participate with teams that are in another account. Beyond our scope for today, that'll be a wonderful topic for a future session, but for right now, that's where we would do that. Let's talk about members. Here's where I can assign members to teams. Right now, we can see that each team has one member. I'm going to click on the hyperlink for the surveyors team. And when I do, you can see that I, as a project admin, am a member of the surveyor team. That is one of the rights that project admins have. They are automatically a member of every team. It's inherited as part of their admin status. I would like Morty to represent my survey team. I can enter member names up here. Note that I can also assign people to teams based on role or company. That would probably be an even faster way to build out a team. I'm just going to type Morty's name here. And then once I add him to this team, this is where I can assign the permission level. Remember, I created folders. So here I'm assigning the permission level that Morty's going to have to the team space. Let's open this up, and I'm going to give him edit permissions. That would allow him to create content in there and view and edit content. I will then click add. This will add Morty to the team. Once Morty's been added, I'll click close. Now, in the future, if I ever come to settings and go to team setup, I can manage the teams from here. If I click members, for instance, this is where I could change the permissions for anybody who's a member of this team. I could also remove people from the team. Let's click close. Okay, just to close this out, a couple things beyond our scope. Coordination. We can set up coordination spaces for each team. This would allow us to leverage automatic clash detection, where I can aggregate files together and do clash detection and reviews and things like that. Each team can have their own coordination space set up to allow them to review their own content and aggregate that together before they share it with other teams. You can also have a coordination space associated with the shared folder because that's where each team is going to be sharing their stuff. So essentially everything is going to be in there. You could clash detect in there. You can create issues and comments and things like that. Once again, topic for another day. We're not going to set that up right now. We can always set that up later. And then finally, let's come down to manage. I do not have to set up a main model. This would be a Revit-centric type of thing. I don't need to pick a model to use as the main model, so we don't need to worry about that. DWG file support. This is always on by default. When that's turned on, DWG files can be viewed in the team space, used in package workflows, which means we can share them, and change analysis so we can compare them. However, you may experience performance issues when large numbers of DWGs exist in one team space. That is another reason why I do this. I try and control how much the platform sees, and we'll kind of reiterate that here as we go. All right, now that I've set up my teams, I am going to jump into Civil 3D and we'll take a look at the topo file that the surveyor has that they would like to share. I'm going to jump over to Civil 3D, and we're pretending that we're Morty right now. I'm going to go to Open, and I'm going to jump to my Autodesk Docs drive letter. Please note, as I go into these directories, it's kind of an interesting situation. I'm playing the part of multiple folks here. Different people have different rights. As I jump in and out of this, we may see more than what the average user would see, but I'll highlight that as we get there. I'm going to go into my account, and I'm going to go into the Briarwood Phase 1 project files. And if I was Morty, now I would only see the surveyors folder and the shared folder. I would not be able to see engineers because I wouldn't have rights to that. Let's go to surveyors, base drawings, topo. What we see on screen is an example of the topography we'll say the surveyors have been working on within their team space. We'll say they've been creating break lines and assigning points and making edits to this. At the point now that this is ready to be shared, we can now share it, okay? I just wanted you to see it. In fact, if I click on this for a second, we can bring this up in the object viewer. Okay, that's just a rough idea of what this surface looks like. Let's close that up. And I'm going to close this. To share the file, they are going to go to their web browser to create the package. And I'm going to simulate that I'm Morty. Let me click to go into another web browser here, and I will go into the Autodesk Construction Cloud. We are going to log in as Morty. I'm going to put in his username and password. When Morty gets into the cloud, we'll grab that Briarwood Phase 1 project. And then notice what Morty can see in here. These are the only folders for which Morty has rights. From here, I'm going to go to Design Collaboration. When I go to Design Collaboration, it reverts to the home screen. This is where I can see the name of the current team, surveyors, and down below I can see the contents of their team space. Topo.dwg. Remember, they had the Alta file and the other one, but we're not seeing that because it's only looking at the base DWG's folder. When they want to share, they will do that using a timeline. We can access the timeline by clicking this button at the top. It's a lot like a drawer. When I click, that will open up. From here, we can see the timeline associated with each team. Now, I'm not seeing the engineer team yet. I won't see that timeline until the engineer actually shares something. So for right now, this is just showing us the word shared. The way the timelines work, we can see that it's colorized based on a unit of time, and these are days currently. We can navigate this by dragging these sliders left and right to kind of reduce the number of days. I can then drag this back and forth. I can also put my cursor inside this timeline and roll the wheel back and forth, or I can hold the left mouse button down if I'm zoomed in. I can hold the left mouse button down to drag left and right. When you share packages in here, by default, when the timeline opens up, it will always open up to a zoom extents view from the point you shared your first package to the point you shared your last package, however long that is. We haven't shared a package yet, so it's kind of showing us a full week. Once you share your first package, the next time I open this drawer, it can zoom in on that package, and then your timeline's only a couple minutes long. So just note that it's always going to default to a zoom extents view. Another thing, there are multiple timelines or swim lanes, if you will, associated with each team. If I click this flyout, you'll see that the main swim lane associated with the surveyor team, this is the one that will show icons each time a package has been created or shared. And at the risk of destroying the end of the movie here, that's what the little plus is for on this timeline, is to create a new package. Other swim lanes associated with the surveyor team represent each model that you have within your team space. Once again, another reason why we kind of simplify things. Maybe I have 10 models here. I could have 10 swim lanes down below my team name that will show me the status and the progression of every model that's within my team space. You can see there's a square. Square represents a model. If I hover over that, I can see the version of that, and I can see when it was saved to the cloud. Each time that file is versioned up, we'll see new icons appear for not just this model, but every model within this space. And we would see it not just for our team, but we would see it for the other teams as well. Now, if you'd like to simplify things, some folks don't like to see all of the additional lines for the additional models. We can come up and click this filter button. From here, I can hide all of the timelines associated with models, or I can hide just the models that are associated with other teams or just my team. Just to simplify this, I'm going to click to hide all of the models. So now we just have an individual swim lane. To create a package, I'm going to come down and click the Add button. When you click the Add button, it will open up this area where we can generate the package. We can give the package a name. I can call this Topo Share, and I can click the check. Down here is where I can select the objects within my team space that I would like to share. We can share sets. Now, this is a Revit thing, so we don't have to worry about sets. If I expand models, this shows us the DWG files or the models that are within our team space. Once again, another great reason for minimizing things. I'm going to choose that topo file. And then documents, I can share Word documents, PDFs, things like that. If I click Add Documents, currently it's going to say it doesn't find anything because it's only looking in that base DWGs folder. If I had a Documents folder and I put documents in there, I could attach documents to this package. Let me close this. Think of a package as being a lot like a zip file, very similar to that. In this case, I've selected my topo model to share. I'm going to click Save. And when I save that, let me open this drawer up again. I just want to show you the icon. You can see that I've got a circle in the timeline, and it's kind of a dotted edge. This shows us that a package has been created, but it's not yet been shared. The benefit of doing that is we could come back to this later and delete the package. I could also jump in and I could edit this if I wanted to. I'm going to share it. Let me click Share. When we share a package, I can give it a description. This is the existing ground topography. Let's click Share. When you share a package, it is replicated into that shared folder. Let me open the drawer up here again, and we can see the icon is changed to a solid circle. This is very easy now. Each team, when you're looking in your team space, you can see if you have saved packages, they'd be open circles, and then the closed circles would be ones that you shared. All right, let's look at things from the engineer's perspective. I'm going to jump to a different browser. I'm in this browser now, operating as the engineering team. Let me go to Home. When a package is shared, an email can be sent to let the other teams know. To control the emails, here on the Home area of Design Collaboration, there's an email icon. If you click right here is where you can turn on those notifications. That way, each time there's a transaction, you'll be notified. So we'll assume I got that notification. If I expand the timeline on my end, down below here, I can see my team name and I can see the contents of my team space. I don't have any files in there right now. I can also see the surveyor's timeline or swim lane. And this open circle shows me that they have shared a package. If I hover over this icon, I can see the name of the package and I can see when it was shared. I'm going to click on this. When I click on the package, I can see the contents of the package down below. I can see the name of the package, I can see the description, and then the contents of the package can be divided up by these different types. It has one model in it. There's the model there. If I want to view that model, I can click Explore. And let me push this up. We have a view cube, just like we have within the Civil 3D environment. I can also zoom extents. The viewer within the web browser is very similar to the object viewer that we have in Civil 3D, so this is nice to get a cursory view of this file. If you actually wanted to pull elevations and things like that, the best place to view that would be within Civil 3D. We'll touch on that here in a second. I'm going to click Consume, and I will consume that to my team space. Let's go back to Docs for a second. I just want to talk about that whole viewing concept. When we created our team spaces, we assigned permissions. So just as an example, we'll look at this from Morty's perspective. If I right-click on the Surveyor folder and go to Permission Settings, you can see that it gave Morty edit permissions when I set up that team space. And he would have edit permissions to not only the team space, but he would have edit permissions to all of the folders below. it's inherited. We saw this when we talked about permissions a few sessions ago. Having said that, if we go to the shared folder, Morty gets edit access to the surveyors folder because when he shares, he needs the ability to edit and place things in there. However, other team folders, you can see it automatically sets Morty to view only. So anything that the engineer would share to the shared folder, Morty would be able to open that within Civil 3D and view it and take measurements or elevations or things like that. And you don't have to worry about damaging the file because they don't have the rights to change it. We can see here that under surveyors, that's where the file was shared. Let's go to engineers. When I consumed it in my consumed folder now, notice great organization. It creates a folder in consumed called surveyors, so I know what team it came from. And there's the file that I consumed from them. Let's create a data shortcut to it. I am going to jump into Civil 3D, and we're looking at this now from the engineer's perspective. Let's go to Open, and I am going to jump to Autodesk Docs, and I'm going to go to my account, and I'm going to go to Briarwood. I'm going to be going here a lot. Let me drag that over. I'll create a shortcut to it. Let's go to Project Files. Now, the engineers would only be able to see their folder, and they would be able to see the shared folder. Or if you had other folders in there, if you assign rights to those teams, they'd be able to see those there. But for right now, the engineers would only be able to see these two. Let me go into engineers and consumed. This is what I consumed from the surveyors. Let me open that topo file. So this is the file that I consumed from that team. I would like to create data shortcuts to this. So I'm going to create data shortcuts for this project. I'll go to Manage, and I'll set my working folder. To set my working folder, I am going to put this in the Docs. We'll go to Briarwood, Phase 1, Project Files, Engineers. Remember, I made that folder, that working folder, C3D Data. That's the nice thing about this concept is each team space can have their own data shortcuts folder within it. I'm going to choose this as the working folder within my team. Let's click Select Folder. And then I will choose New Shortcuts folder. And so within that Civil 3D Data folder within my team, I'm just going to create a folder called Shortcuts. You can use the names that you like. I'll click OK. I've set up my data shortcuts for my team. I can now go to Create Data Shortcuts. I want to add this existing ground surface that I got from the surveyor to my, essentially like my project. Each team is almost like its own project. There's that existing ground surface. I can then close this drawing. Save changes? No, I didn't do anything to the file. I just put a pointer to it. In fact, it wouldn't make any sense to save it anyway, because if the surveyor puts a new version in the shared folder, when I consume it, it's going to overwrite the one that's in my consumed. You're not supposed to edit things in consumed. It wouldn't make sense to do that because those files are essentially controlled by someone else. Let's create a new file now. I want to leverage that topo that we got from the surveyor. So I'm going to create a new file. And still, I'm engineer. I'm going to do Save As. And I'm going to save this in Briarwood Phase 1. I'll save this in my team space. I'm going to save it under base DWGs, and I'm going to call this Surface Profile. There we go. Now that I've saved this file within the cloud, I can come over and reference that data shortcut that I made. We'll drag this in. And then I will do a zoom extent so we can see that. And then I'm just going to generate an alignment. We'll create a quick one here just in the interest of time. We'll generate the alignment. We won't bother with name. I'm going to put some curves in that. And then I will click the alignment and I will create a surface profile from that. Let's click Add, Draw on Profile View, Create Profile View, and I'll place that over here. So there is my surface profile through the data that I received from the surveyor. I am going to go ahead and save this drawing, and I will close out. Now, let's look at things from Morty's perspective again. Maybe things changed. The existing topography had some updates. We're going to assume we're Morty now. I'm going to go to Open. And in the Briarwood Phase 1 project, the surveyor, once again, would only be able to see these two folders. The surveyor would go into base drawings and they would open up their topography. This is where they would be making modifications to it. And when I make modifications to this, in this case, I'm just going to make something that's going to be painfully obvious to see. In this file, I've got some break lines that are at grossly exaggerated elevations. I'm just going to add these break lines to the surface. I will go to Modify. I want to modify a surface. I want to add data. I want to add break lines. Not going to worry about the descriptions. I'm going to go ahead and grab these two. When I press Enter, you can see the change. If I click on that surface, go to Object Viewer, okay, not a great change, but it's going to be an obvious change. Let me close this. And we will save this file. All right, as we saw in previous sessions, this file was saved to Desktop Connector. It's now being synced back to the cloud. At this point, they would close out of the drawing. This is now an updated version. They're now going to share a package containing this file with the other teams. As the surveyor, we're going to go back to the web browser, and here as Morty under Design Collaboration, I'm going to go to Home. Here on the home screen, I can see the team name and I can see the contents of their team space down below. Once again, they've just got the one topo file in there. The drawer is open still, allowing me to see the timeline. I can see the first package that we sent. I would like to send a new package. To create a new package, I could click the plus to do that, or I could click the button up here. Even faster, if you're creating a package that is identical to a previous package, I can simply click on the previous package and I could choose Reuse. I want to reuse that one, and it's telling us, hey, a model's been updated since you last edited this package. Do you want to update? Yes. I want to make sure that my new package includes the latest file, and you can see that there. All right, so it already selected the model for me. I can give this a name. We'll call this Updated Topo. And then I can come over and click Share. I updated the topo with some new break lines. And we'll click Share. Once that's been shared, I'm going to click the Home button to kind of clean the screen up here. And then I will open up the drawer, and you can see now I've got a pair of icons showing me packages that have been shared with the other teams. I'm going to go back to the other engineering team now. Engineering team got an email letting them know that the surveyor shared some new stuff. So as the engineering team, I'm going to go to Design Collaboration. We'll take a look at what we got. When I go to Design Collaboration, it is defaulting to the engineers team. Let me open up the drawer. You can see on my timeline, I'm seeing the additional drawings like I mentioned before. The engineers now have the surface profile drawing that's been saved twice. I'm going to filter out those additional models just to show the swim lanes associated with packages. And we can see the surveyor team. This is the latest package that has been sent. If I hover over that, I can see the name, description, and date. I can click on that and I can view the contents. It's got one model in it, name, description. I can explore this. As we saw earlier, this is kind of the lightweight way to view it, a lot like Object Viewer. If I wanted to really get in and do detailed reviewing of this, I could do this through Civil 3D. For right now, we'll say this is good. I'm going to consume it. When I consume it, it pulls the latest version into my team space. And we can see that if I go to Docs and I go to Engineers and I go to Consumed, under Surveyors, once again, well organized, you can see there's the latest version has been placed in there. For that reason, when I go to Civil 3D, when I open up that surface profile drawing, let's go back to Briarwood, Project Files. I'm an engineer. Let me go into Engineers. I'm going to go to Base Drawings, and I'm going to open up Surface Profile. When this opens up, it will version up my data shortcut, which in turn updates my profile. Now, in this example, I created team spaces, and I'm just sharing a topography. You can share utilities. You can share corridors. Any of the civil objects can be shared this way. DWG files can be shared this way for the purpose of creating external references that update automatically. So using the team space concept, we can have an environment where multiple teams can have their own collaborative space within a Civil 3D project. Each team can work independently on their own content and share it with the other teams when they're ready. Shared packages are saved in a centralized shared folder that all teams can access for the purpose of reviewing files. After reviewing files, the teams can consume them for the purpose of creating external references or data shortcuts. In the future, when newer versions of files are shared, teams can simply consume the new versions to update any external references or data shortcuts within their team space. All right, I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoints. We talked about a lot of things today. We talked about the team space concept. We just kind of went over that again here a second ago. We looked at how we could create and configure team spaces. We looked at how we could navigate the project timeline. The timeline is where we see the status of the files that we've shared, as well as the files that are within our team space. We saw how we could navigate that project timeline and how we could use it to create packages. We saw how we could share packages with other teams. We saw how we could consume packages into a team space and have it update a data shortcut. And as far as additional resources, I'm going to be sharing some links to the Design Collaboration course found within the learnacc.autodesk.com site. Wonderful course. It covers even more than what we talked about today. I'm going to be sharing a link to the timeline course. There is an entire course that shows you how to navigate that timeline that we saw. Finally, I'm going to be sharing a hyperlink that will allow you to access all of the recordings that we have done to this point. This way you can review all the workflows leading up to this session. In the event there are any questions that have gone unanswered, we will get back to you with an answer so long as we have your permission. On behalf of Lou Holland, myself, and the entire team working behind the scenes here at Autodesk, we want to say thank you for coming. We hope you find value in these sessions, and we look forward to seeing you guys again at the next 30-minute workout.